Man up and marry those sluts. That's the advice the Tradcons give us, that us Generation X men and us Millennial men, that we need to go out there and work ourselves into an early grave for a company that doesn't appreciate us, to build a home for little Sally Strader Hamsterbaiter, who's out there partying it up, living it up, having the time of her life right now. But in about 10 years or so, her looks will start to fade. She'll have trouble paying for that spawn of a criminal degenerate that she gave birth to, and she'll come to the church, become a born-again virgin, and look for a real man. The born-again virgin. Let's talk about this phenomenon. Not being a churchgoer, I haven't seen it personally, but I've read about it in so many places that it seems to be a fairly consistent pattern. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe in forgiveness. I believe in the ability for people to change. And I certainly have a lot of sympathy for these girls nowadays. You see, feminism, at its core, what it's about dragging everybody down to the same level. Most of these feminists, if they aren't ugly and sexually worthless, at the very minimum, they're worthless on the marriage market. They've got horrid personalities, and nobody would want to marry them. So they send out this pro-sex, sex-positive feminism. They tell girls to go out there and live it up, try and be like what they think a guy is, so that all women are ruined. And if you're a young girl, you're going to get the exact same information as everybody else. And chances are that you are going to make mistakes. So I do believe in the ability for people to change, for people to be forgiven. But before you can be forgiven, you need to show contrition. These born-again virgins that are popping up in the churches nowadays don't actually show contrition. They blame the men for seducing them. They never accept responsibility for the fact that they were the ones choosing to go out there and get drunk and sleep with anonymous dudes. That they were enjoying it, that they were having fun. Even if she was one of the rare exceptions that fell for a guy who promised to love her and then disappeared into the night, she still needs to take responsibility for the fact that she was seduced because she wanted to be seduced. She wanted to believe in his pretty lies. And despite that nagging voice at the back of her head telling her that something was off about him, she went for it anyway. Remind me again. What was it that Eve did in the garden? So, you go out, you're a good man, and you work for the company, and then once you're 30, 35, maybe one of these used-up women approaches you, and you marry her. And then what happens? Do you go to the original vows that Paul laid out? The husband needs to cherish his wife, the wife needs to submit to her husband? Or, during the wedding ceremony, does the priest give you a lecture about mutual submission? I guess Paul just didn't take enough women's studies courses. So us, Millennial and Generation X men, we look at all of this, and you tell us to man up, and we say, why? Now, don't get us wrong. We see the exact same problems that you Tradcons see. We see the atomization of society. We see how horrible these single-parent families are, and how, yes, our civilization is declining, and we have a birth rate that is below replacement. We see all of these things as well. Except the difference is that us lunatic reactionaries, we see the essence of things, and you Tradcons see only the appearance. Let me give you another example of where appearance was confused for essence. The housing bubble. See, back during the Clinton administration, some bean counter that had never been to a party in his life noted that people that own their own homes tend to be more responsible and invested in the community than people who rent. And so they came up with the brilliant idea of offering subprime mortgages, that if you were lower income, we'll give you a loan that you can't afford to pay back, backed by government money. With the idea that this would turn poor people into the responsible middle class. And the obvious thing happened. Turns out that it's not being the homeowner that makes you a virtuous person, it's the virtue that makes you a homeowner. Similarly, when we look at the 1950s and we see all these stable couples, all these hardworking men, all of these solid families raising healthy children, it's not the marriage that makes things virtuous, it's the virtue that makes the marriage. If you want to fix what's going on nowadays, you need to focus on that essence. You need to start advocating for virtue again. Now, certainly, us men need to start being a bit more virtuous than we are at present. In this world, it is far too easy to be a whining dork, or, alternatively, a completely amoral rake hell. And we need to start pursuing those masculine virtues, even though we live in a world where masculine virtue is widely punished by schools, by employers, by the society at large. We still need to pursue masculine virtue if we are going to restart civilization. However, it's not primarily men that are driving this degeneration of society. Men will pretty much do whatever they have to get laid. We need women in our life. We need sex, but we also need the sexual love of a woman. So, in a society where women are choosing the men that invest in society, the responsible men, the business owners, the hard workers, more men are going to choose those things. In a society like this one, where women are choosing the criminal, the drug dealer, the bass player in some crappy band, men are going to go do those things. You Tradcons are white knighting for these women. These women make their choices. Yes, choices laid out to them by MTV and feminism, both which are terrible influences, but nonetheless, they're making their decisions, and they need to take responsibility if they're going to change their ways. But the Tradcons never point the finger of responsibility at the woman. It's always the guy's fault. It's the guy's fault who seduces her. You know, that very small percentage of the population that are drug dealers and he seduced a woman? Yeah, blaming him isn't going to stop him. You need to put the responsibility where it lies. And while male virtue is a wonderful thing that we should be celebrating more, you also need to focus on the female virtue. Because most women nowadays are not virtuous. And if there's no virtuous women, why should any guy try and be virtuous towards them? Quite frankly, if you did have your way, and all these men manned up, and we did marry those sluts, still wouldn't fix anything. We'd see a rash of divorces in 5 years, 7 years, kind of like we are right now, initiated by the women, who then put their kids into poverty, put them at risk when they start dating all sorts of bad boys again. And you guys blame the men for this, even though the majority of divorces are initiated by women for frivolous reasons. Until you're willing to start being honest and start focusing on the essence of this problem, that being the lack of female virtue, it's going to keep getting worse. Man up and marry those sluts? No. But man up and find a virtuous lady worthy of marrying? That's a possibility. Aurini out, folks.